Wife came home early and found her husband in their bedroom, making love to a very attractive young woman, and was somewhat upset. "You are a disrespectful pig," she cried. "How dare you do this to me, a faithful wife, the mother of your children? I'm leaving you. I want a divorce straight away." And the husband replied, "Hang on just a minute, love, so at least I can tell you what happened." "Fine, go ahead," she sobbed, "but they'll be the last words you'll say to me." And the husband began, "Well, I was getting into the car to drive home, and this young lady here asked me for a lift. She looked so down and out and defenseless that I took pity on her and let her into the car. I noticed that she was very thin, not well dressed, and very dirty. She told me that she hadn't eaten for 3 days. So, in my compassion, I brought her home and warmed up the enchiladas I made for you last night. The ones you wouldn't eat because you're afraid you'll put on weight. The poor thing devoured them in moments. Since she needed a good cleanup, I suggested a shower, and while she was doing that, I noticed her clothes were dirty and full of holes, so I threw them away. Then, as she needed clothes, I gave her the designer jeans that you have had for a few years, but don't use because you say they are too tight. I also gave her the underwear that was your anniversary present. I found a sexy blouse my sister gave you for Christmas that you don't use just to annoy her. And I also donated those boots you bought at the expensive boutique and don't use because someone at work has a pair of the same." The husband took a quick breath and continued, "She was so grateful for my understanding and help. And as I walked her to the door, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, 'Please, do you have anything else said that your wife doesn't use?'" A blind man went to a restaurant, makes his way to the nearest table, puts his walking stick to the side, and sits down. "Menu, sir?" asked the owner. "I am blind. Just bring me some of your dirty forks. I will smell each one and order," said the blind man. The confused owner went to the kitchen to retrieve some dirty forks and returned to the blind man. The blind man smelled the forks and said, "Yes, I will have the lamb with seasoned potatoes and spring vegetables." Unbelievable, the owner thought. The next day, the blind man returned to the restaurant. The owner, wanting to see how good his smell is, went to the kitchen where his wife Brenda was cooking and said, "Do me a favor and rub this fork in your private part," which she did. The owner returned to the blind man and let him smell the fork. The blind man takes it, puts it to his nose, and said, "Oh, interesting. I never knew Brenda worked here." Ann was sick of being overweight and wanted to lose some fat. He calls a company and orders their 5-day, 5-pound weight loss program. The next day, there's a knock on the door, and he sees a beautiful 19-year-old girl there with a sign around her neck that reads, "If you can catch me, you can have me without a second thought." He takes off after her. A few miles later, he finally gives up. The same girl shows up for the next 4 days. On the 5th day, he weighs himself. The next day, he sees he has lost 5. He calls the company and orders their 5-day 10 program. The next day, there's a knock at the door, and when he opens it, he sees a really sexy woman with a sign around her neck that reads, "If you catch me, you can have me." He does his best to catch her, but couldn't do so. This routine happens for the next 4 days. On the 5th day, he has already lost 10. He calls the company again to order their 7-day 25 program. The representative asks, "Are you sure this is our toughest program?" He replies, "Absolutely haven't felt this much better in years." The next day, there's a knock at the door. When the guy opens it, he finds a huge, naked, muscular guy standing there with a sign around his neck that reads, "If I catch you, you are mine." He lost 33 that week.